end-to-end flow with gRPC, and finally some challenges and conclusions. I would like to ask a simple question from every one of you. You guys must have seen advertisements on various websites. So let's say the Times of India, so at the top and at the right of the website, you must be seeing some ads. So when you load that web page, that ads are not pre-filled, but initially they are the empty spaces, and then a real-time bidding takes place at the back end, and to select which ad needs to be shown to which user. You won't see those empty spaces because the latency of this bidding is very low, and this process is called real-time bidding. So as you can see on the slides, we have this entire workflow going behind. So we have publisher. So the websites or applications that have these empty spaces are called publisher, which are connected with SSP or supply side platform that manage and help them to sell their ad inventory. Then on the other side, there are brands or advertisers, which can be some e-commerce websites, travel agencies, or companies selling their products and services. And they are connected with the demand side platform or DSP that help them buy ad spaces in these auctions. And finally, at the middle lies the ad exchange. So it acts as a virtual marketplace where both the sides interact, and ad exchange facilitates real-time auction, determines the highest bidder, and decides which ad is shown. So talking about DSP, it lets advertisers buy, manage, and optimize digital ad inventory across various channels like display, video, connected TV, audio, etc. So this is where our team comes in, that handles analytics and allows our customers to make decisions efficiently. So this was more about Adobe Advertising DSP. Now we'll be talking about the DSP campaign structure. So a quick glance on it. So campaign lies at the top and defines some key parameters like budget, duration, advertiser, etc. Then we have package. Package group multiple placements that share some common pacing strategies and optimization goals, so that we can allocate budget to better performing placements. And then we have placements that define the targeting rules for specific ad types like CTV, native, video, etc. And finally, the ad, which contains the creative unit and tracking URL. We are discussing about these dashboards to set the context and make you guys understand the large amount of data that it supports, and why we have been making these architecture choices. So talking about our first dashboard, it is the campaign dashboard. It is our default landing page, which shows a unified view of campaign performance and economics across all the advertisers. And why this dashboard is important for customers. Through this dashboard, customer can view analytics, see how their campaigns are performing, and check metrics like CPM, impressions, spend, etc. Also on this dashboard, everything from campaign planning, setup and reporting, everything can happen in a single workflow. Also, this dashboard provides flexibility to the customers to create custom column sets so that they can view whatever metrics they like, and also they can export the entire data in XML format for detailed analysis and to get raw data. And more importantly, from this campaign dashboard, users can access package placement and ad dashboards for deeper analysis. So technically speaking, this dashboard supports 97 metrics, such as conversions, reach, and CPM and spend, impressions, etc. With maximum time window of up to 2 years, and results can span over thousands of entity and rows. And the customer can fetch latest data by refreshing the page. Now, obviously, who likes viewing data in tabular format? So, who likes viewing data in tabular format when we can view them in more enriching visualizations? So here comes our next dashboard, which is Insights dashboard, which deliver high-level performance insights through various interactive visualizations, and it enable faster and smarter optimization across campaigns and allows customer to make better decisions and to understand where they're lacking or how their campaigns are performing. Customer can track long-term trends across campaign and also identify the growth and efficiency gaps and turn data into actionable insights instantly. And this particular dashboard is multi-tab view, that is, users can find data around reach, conversion, and overall performance of their campaign. Also, this is very beginner friendly and very useful for even self-serve customers. And more importantly, this dashboard supports dynamic filters. And talking about the technical aspects, so it supports 75 metrics and 20 plus dimensions with maximum time window of up to 3 months, and results can span over thousands of years. And also it supports multiple query types such as time series, report, insights, etc. So since we have seen both the dashboards that are supported on our platform, now talking about what happens at the backend. So reporting application powers these dashboards. So reporting application is a gRPC based microservice. It is internal only service, that is, it cannot be accessed directly from the UI. And this is the entire architecture. So from UI, a REST request is sent to the routing layer from where a proto request is generated, which is sent to the dashboard reporting service. And this service collects data from various data sources such as Druid, Delta Lake, SQL, combine the data and aggregates it, then send as a proto response to the routing layer, and finally a REST response is sent to the UI and the data is shown to the users. And talking about the performance benchmarks, so for report request, the average response time is 812 milliseconds. This time is bit high because this particular request, that is report request, supports a large number of metrics at the same time, and also sometimes the data is so complex that fetching the data from the data source itself consumes a large amount of time. Then next is the time series request with average response time of 353 milliseconds. This time is comparatively less because it supports lesser number of metrics and dimensions. So now I will let Akshara to take over and discuss about our architecture and how we are leveraging gRPC to it.
So before we move forward, we would like to say that REST APIs have been great and they've been solving a lot of problems for us in a very simple manner. But as you saw, the dashboards were quite complex where we need time series data, which is basically reporting at a daily or an hourly level in fact. So with this growth in the amount of data and the requirement for a low latency, we felt that gRPC is a better fit for our use case as it provides us an efficient real-time communication option. And with this, it provides these capabilities, which I'll go over in more detail and explain how we are utilizing them in our framework. So first, we start with performance with the binary protocol buffers and the multiplex connections. There is streaming support, there is reliability with built-in deadlines and cancellation that we've been discussing in other sessions as well. And additionally, a cross-language support that gives us the flexibility to integrate multiple applications. So everything in gRPC starts with a proto file. It's kind of a contract that the server and the client maintain and ensures that when they are talking, they talk in the same language. Whenever a request is exchanged between the two, they refer the same dictionary and there are no surprises in what they are receiving. So our proto files, as usual, include the service methods and the proto request and response formats, where the gRPC server, in this case the dashboard reporting application, has all the implementations, and the routing layer is responsible for making all the client requests. So here we are showing a sample of a proto request that fits our use case. We have the account ID. So as we saw that all the data is being managed at an account level, so we first pass in the account ID, followed by the start date and the end date. So since the user has the ability to choose custom intervals, they are not predefined. They have the option to choose from 30-day until as long as lifetime metrics, which can span to 2 years. This is where we use the start and end date metrics. Then we have repeated string columns. So as you saw in the other slides, that our dashboard is quite dynamic. That is, it is not limited to a set of metrics that were always being returned to the user. The user has the ability to choose what he wants to see. And that is where we are using these columns to pass in these selected metrics as an array object. But by using these repeated columns here, it becomes much more efficient when sent over the network, because there is no extra drama of maintaining all the array double quotes or the commas, etc. And it is much more efficient this way. Then we have a filter. So filter here is a custom nested message that we've created in our application, because there are multiple endpoints working in the application, including the time series one or the report or insights. But the core logic remains the same, that they are filtering data with respect to certain conditions. And that is where we are using these message filter across all these requests. And in itself, it has all these enum operators specified. That is, if it's a logical operation, then is it an AND filter or an OR filter? In case of certain filters, if you want to check for in conditions, equality, etc., that all also be specified here in these message filters, so that the contract becomes more strongly typed and there are no way in which a request is sent that doesn't make sense. Coming to the binary encoding, so we know as the protobuf setup sends all the requests and responses in a binary format. So just for a quick look how this would work is that in my proto request I've specified the fields and a certain tag that's associated with them. So here my account ID has tag 1, start date has tag 2. So when we encode these values, it starts with the tag and the field value. So for a message that is account ID 1234, it becomes tag 1 followed by the binary value of 1234, then it goes to tag 2 and the corresponding field encoded. So in this case, when our requests, as we know, could grow very large with all the 97 columns selected and a couple of filters applied, this is kind of the size of request that we can be receiving. If we look at the numbers, our actual request could be 4 to 47 bytes. But with the binary encoding, we are able to reduce it substantially using by just using 1180 bytes. So this is a substantial 72% decrease in the size of the data that is being sent on the network. So if the JSON request would be sending a novel, we are just sending an ebook with the same content but much more cheaper and efficient. We are also utilizing streaming in our framework. So we are using server-side streaming here, since we are receiving one request from the client, but instead of sending one big blob of data, we are streaming it incrementally. So first we send out the column headers, which are the actual selected metrics which was received in the request as well. This is kind of a placeholder for what all other data has to follow. Then it has the data rows. This is what the actual data or the metrics that we show on the UI are. So in case of time series, if I say a 30-day interval, these can be 30 data points. For campaigns, there can be hundreds of campaigns that the user has created. So instead of sending all these campaigns or the days data together, we send it one by one. So for days, 30-day rows would be streamed one after the other, and followed by the summaries. Those summaries here are the subtotals or the other summarized data that the user would want to see at a glance. This is followed by the pagination information, that is used for the navigation. So we keep on saying that gRPC is efficient, but how is it efficient? And what is making it smart? So as we know, gRPC uses HTTP2 and enforces multiplexing. So instead of maintaining multiple TCP connections between the client and the server, we have a single channel that exists with multiple streams of requests and response that can be sent here. So how we've set it up is that for each of these endpoints, we've created their custom, the custom concurrency and deadlines for our application. So depending on the use case and how much load we expect from each of these methods, we've specified how many concurrent threads or how many concurrent streams of these requests can be processed in parallel. Also, these deadlines are kept as per their requirement as well. So this ensures that there is no head of line blocking. Even if my one request is taking a lot of time, it does not impact others. Others could still return in time and the response can be sent to the user. For smart deadline management, unlike REST, gRPC is very efficient in propagating these deadlines to the server from the client. So our client is kind of a bit restless and he wants the results as fast as possible. So our server application is also taking this into mind. At each step, before it proceeds to do any major computation, it checks, do I even have time? Does it even make sense that I run this query and I don't have enough time? So our application keeps on checking before any major query. For example, before querying SQL or querying Druid, it checks that if I have sufficient time, then only I'll proceed with the next computation. And these deadlines are actually propagated to external calls as well. Here in case of Druid, we send these timeouts to Druid queries as well, so that they can also adhere to these deadlines. So this was about how we've set up our gRPC-based reporting service. But additionally, we have a legacy REST-based application in our system, which has been there for quite a long time and is quite tightly coupled in certain use cases. So it is still in action. So it is a traditional REST-based application, but in the backend it does the same operation. That is, it gets all the metric and metadata from Druid and SQL and returns to the UI. The difference being that it's a traditional REST, so it has different endpoints for each of these request types and sends complete large request and response object without streaming and multiplexing. So for this, we try to compare and come up with certain metrics that anyone who's trying to decide between a REST and a gRPC-based service could take into account. And here, all these metrics we've tried to evaluate based on how we've deployed our service. So for us, these are certain metrics for which gRPC was doing better. So performance, streaming, complex queries, high throughput, operational reliability, multi-language client support, and connection management is where we saw gRPC was a clear winner for us, because with Protobuf we got strongly typed contracts that were sent in binary, which was much more efficient. And also it was HTTP, it had HTTP multiplexing, so connection management was much less here. Here we saw that for the service definition and load balancing, it was quite a tie, because with JSON-based REST request also, it is quite easy to set it up. So not a very complex scenario there, whereas with Proto also we could achieve it very easily. Load balancing also is kind of similar in both of those. There were certain scenarios where we saw that REST was doing better based on how our services were deployed. So as we know, gRPC could not be accessed directly until we come up with certain other handling for that. So for that case, ingress, configuration, health checks, browser access and API gateway was not as simple for us. We were only able to implement TCP check for the gRPC based service. Additionally, we have other checks to ensure application stability, but that was not possible through our Kubernetes-based liveness probes. Even ingress configuration was not as easy. For debugging and the monitoring and logging, again, as we know, REST becomes much more easy as they are directly accessible and can be logged and debugged easily. Now coming to more quantitative analysis. So although both reporting applications in our system are deployed slightly differently, so these latencies cannot be compared directly, but we still try to come up with a scenario where they can perform in a similar manner with the similar request formats. And we saw that a gRPC based service was doing much better. in case of reporting as normal tabular reports as well as the time series, which is the time-based data as well, where we're seeing quite a substantial increase in the performance. Even coming to how much data we are sending and how we are sending, the REST-based application was sending everything as one big blob. So even with the gzip compression, it was 13 KB of data that was being sent from the server and the client. Whereas with the gRPC based service, since it's being sent in chunks, the individual chunk size is quite small. So even though the request response can be large, it is broken down into chunks, which makes it more efficient here.
Thanks, Akshara. So, like any other framework or library, even we face certain limitations and challenges while integrating gRPC into our architecture. So, the first one being debugging complexity, because debugging gRPC is not as straightforward as debugging REST, because it requires some specific tools like gRPC curl, Postman gRPC, Bloom RPC for debugging. Then next being the learning curve, because developers need to understand proto-syntax, code generation and streaming semantics, and also the initial onboarding of the developer is a bit time consuming, and tooling familiarity is even more difficult than traditional REST API. And then the biggest challenge that we faced was a UI integration constraint, because gRPC responses cannot be streamed directly to browser or UI. They must be converted to HTTP response or exposed through a REST gateway. That is why we are first sending REST requests to routing layer and then connecting with the reporting service. These challenges were being outshined by the functionality of the gRPC, because the binary encoding enabled 39% smaller payloads than JSON and 72% less network bandwidth, with REST giving up to 2.8 GB, and with gRPC we reduced it to 82 MB for 1000 users. Then the streaming enabled 37% faster responses, that is reducing the time from 3000 milliseconds to 1880 milliseconds. HTTP 2 multiplexing reduced the TCP connections to reduced 5 times TCP connections, and also type safe contracts eliminated runtime validation overheads and provided consistent, reliable communication between services. So we can happily say that binary encoding plus streaming plus HTTP2 is the magic formula that helped us make our architecture even more efficient, with the overall impact 5 times less server memory, 4 times faster user experience, because now the user can get access to the data even more faster by since the architecture has reduced the latency, and linear scalability with constant resource usage. So my concluding lines will be that REST makes APIs call faster, call simple, but gRPC makes them faster and even more efficient. Thank you. That was great sharing our journey with all of you. And in case you have any doubts, we can address them. Till then, you guys can connect with us on LinkedIn.